From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight, Canada has expelled a senior Indian diplomat. The move came after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau cited a credible allegation linking New Delhi to the killing of a prominent Canadian Sikh activist. Hardeep Singh Nijjar was murdered in the western Canadian province of British Columbia in June. He was a proponent of the Khalistan movement, which seeks to create a homeland for Sikhs by establishing a state in India's Punjab region. The Indian diplomat expelled from Ottawa is Pawan Kumar Rai. The Canadian government says Rai is also head of India's Foreign Intelligence Agency in Canada. Hours after Trudeau's announcement, India expelled a top Canadian diplomat in retaliation, giving no reason for the expulsion. The Canadian Sikh community, which includes more than 770,000 people, expressed shock and outrage at Nijjar's murder. Canadian police have identified 3 suspects and released a description of a possible getaway vehicle. Trudeau shared his concerns with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the recent G20 summit in New Delhi. Relations between the two leaders appeared strained. Trudeau did not attend the official dinner hosted by the Indian president at the summit. Former head of the National Counterterrorism Center, Michael Leiter, says the interests of the U.S. and the Taliban are aligned under current circumstances. Washington Post columnist David Ignatius claims senior government officials and Leiter told him the CIA is sharing counterterrorism information with the Taliban. According to Ignatius, the Taliban have largely suppressed al-Qaeda operations in Afghanistan and abroad. As part of the U.S. withdrawal agreement from Kabul, the Taliban promised to prevent al-Qaeda from using Afghanistan as a base for foreign operations. U.S. officials believe they have largely kept that promise. An intelligence report shows increased Taliban counterterrorism activity this year, prompting some ISIS leaders to flee Afghanistan. Meanwhile, the United States continues to condemn the Taliban's repressive actions, particularly against women and girls who have been barred from high school and university education. Many U.S. officials, including former CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos, caution against placing too much trust in the Taliban, given their extremist beliefs and past hostilities. Tens of thousands rallied in New York City, urging President Joe Biden to address the climate crisis and phase out fossil fuels. This was the largest climate-focused demonstration in the U.S. in recent times. Demonstrators criticized Biden for not declaring a national climate emergency and for his planned absence at the UN Climate Ambition Summit later this week. The gathering came after a summer marked by severe weather events believed to be worsened by climate change. Despite such occurrences, the Biden administration has greenlit major fossil fuel projects, decisions that contradict critical emission targets. Several progressive lawmakers, including Representative Jamal Bowman, participated in the march. Bowman criticized increased oil and gas subsidies and military spending, linking them to global carbon emissions. Thousands of Muslims gathered Saturday for the annual Minnesota Muslim Convention in Minneapolis. The conference, held annually for 18 years, draws attendees from across the state and beyond. This year's event drew more than 8,000 people. The convention offered a wide-ranging program of lectures, workshops, and panel discussions on a variety of topics relevant to American Muslims. It is the largest and most diverse Congress in the Midwest, with participants of all ages, backgrounds, and interests coming together to learn, connect, and grow. The 2-day event includes lectures, workshops, a Quran competition, an event for Muslim singles, and a multicultural bazaar. Muslims were also able to learn about new opportunities and businesses and connect with other Muslims from all walks of life. The California chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations has praised the introduction of 3 bills in the California legislature. CAIR proposed and backed these bills. They emphasize strengthening the civil rights and religious liberties of Californians. Senator Dave Cortiz's proposal, State Bill 309, seeks to establish a uniform statewide policy on religious dress and grooming in California's correctional system. State Bill 461, introduced by Senator Aisha Wahab, allows state employees to use 8 hours of leave for religious, cultural, or heritage celebrations. And Assembly Bill 1503, introduced by Representative Alex Lee, provides K-12 students with 1 full day off per semester for religious celebrations, an increase from the current 4-hour provision. CAIR Manager of Policy and Government Affairs, Naziha Khan, highlighted the importance of these bills, emphasizing their role in combating discrimination and promoting religious freedom. Khan thanked legislators and urged Governor Gavin Newsom to sign these bills into law. In his first major network interview since leaving office, former President Donald Trump refused to divulge details about his activities on January 6, 2021. Speaking on NBC's Meet the Press, Trump did not say who he spoke with during the violent attack on the U.S. Capitol or whether he watched the event on television. He responded to those questions by saying that he would provide the details in due course. Several former Trump associates have claimed that he watched the incident from a room near the Oval Office and sometimes rewatched parts of it. During the interview, Trump also defended his remarks from the day of the attack, calling them beautiful statements. On the subject of legal consequences for those involved in the Capitol uprising, Trump says he was considering pardons, including for Enrique Tarrio, the former leader of the Proud Boys, who is currently serving a 22-year prison sentence. Trump currently faces numerous legal challenges, including 91 indictments spread across 4 cases. These range from attempts to overturn the 2020 election to allegations of hush money payments. Trump said in the interview he denies any wrongdoing and did not express concern about the possibility of imprisonment. In addition, Trump has admitted that he disregarded the advice of White House lawyers to accept his 2020 election defeat to President Joe Biden. Instead, he said he relied on his intuition and a select group of people who agreed with his views on the election. Search and rescue operations continue in Morocco. Details after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Search and rescue teams in Morocco are continuing efforts for the 13th consecutive day to look for survivors following the devastating September 8th earthquake. Rescue efforts have encountered some difficult terrain in the affected provinces due to the high mountains, according to Andalou news agency. Roughly 3,000 people were killed and more than 6,000 injured when the magnitude 7 earthquake struck. It was the strongest quake to hit the North African country in a century, according to Morocco's National Geophysical Institute. At least 50,000 houses collapsed completely or partially. Residents of these homes were rehoused in tents as a protective measure against bad weather conditions. Last Sunday, the Moroccan government set up special bank accounts to collect donations to aid quake survivors. The Moroccan government also has decided ministers will contribute 1 month's salary in support of earthquake victims. Thousands of people protested in the southern Syrian city of Sweda. It was the largest demonstration in nearly a month, with anti-government protests intensifying despite violence. Protests began last month after President Bashar al-Assad's government cut fuel subsidies. 3 protesters have been wounded by gunfire. Activists blamed party members guarding the government building against violence. The sealing of party offices has become a frequent act of defiance by demonstrators in recent weeks. Protesters chanted, "Syria wants freedom," and "Go away Bashar, enemy of humanity." Smaller sporadic protests took place in neighboring Derna province, the cradle of Syria's 2011 uprising, which Assad brutally crushed. Since 2020, infrequent protests have erupted in the province against deteriorating economic conditions. The war in Syria has killed more than 500,000 people and displaced millions. More than 11,000 people have been killed and over 10,000 others are missing after deadly floods in Libya's eastern city of Derna last week. The UN's Humanitarian Affairs Office said around 170 people were killed outside Derna by the flooding caused by Mediterranean storm Daniel. Over 40,000 people have been displaced across Libya's northeastern area since the start of the floods on September 10th. A source with the Libyan Red Crescent Society, meanwhile, told Andalou news agency the death toll in Libya is expected to exceed 10,000. The source, who spoke on condition of anonymity, said survivors in the thousands are sheltering in schools. Derna was hardest hit by the flooding after the city's dams burst, washing away people and homes. Rescue efforts are ongoing in the coastal city to search for survivors amid the devastation. The site of TellesSultan in Jericho, Palestine, has been inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List. It is a prehistoric archaeological site that houses the oldest continuously inhabited settlement in the world. It is the 4th Palestinian site to be inscribed on the UNESCO list. The Palestinian Authority welcomed inclusion of the site, calling it a matter of great importance and a testament to the authenticity and history of the Palestinian people. UNESCO said the skulls and statues found at the site testify to cultic practices of the Neolithic population. It also notes archaeological material from the early Bronze Age shows signs of urban planning. Key government buildings in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, were hit during heavy clashes between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. Images shared on social media show smoke rising from the Ministry of Justice, the Sudanese Organization for Standardization and Metrology, and the Nile Oil Company. The RSF said the three buildings, as well as busy areas and marketplaces, were deliberately bombed with explosive barrels. Clashes between the army and the RSF since April have intensified in the center of Khartoum, where government buildings, banks, and universities are located. Since April, more than 3,000 civilians have been killed and thousands injured in clashes in the war-torn country. Several ceasefire agreements brokered by Saudi Arabia and the U.S. have failed to end the violence. UN experts have urged Saudi Arabia to overturn the death sentence of Mohammed al-Ghamidi. They expressed concern about the severity of the sentence imposed on him. Ghamidi is accused of engaging in social media dissent and faces a series of criminal allegations. Saudi security services took him into custody June 11th on charges related to his comments on social media. Ghamidi was sentenced to death on July 10th by Saudi Arabia's Special Criminal Court. UN experts say the severity of the penalties blatantly violate established international legal norms and human rights standards. Experts' call comes amid an escalating crackdown in Saudi Arabia on individuals who use social media and the internet to express their views. G77 countries and China, meeting in the Cuban capital of Havana, called for international cooperation and multilateralism. The group, now including more than 130 countries, also called for an end to unilateralism and monopolies, whether military or digital. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres noted the essential role of the G77 and China in the evolving multipolar world. He stressed the need for a system that considers the needs of all and not just the privileged. During the summit, Cuba's Prime Minister Manuel Marrero acknowledged Cuba's symbolic role as a beacon for the global South. He thanked participants for their opposition to the ongoing U.S. embargo against Cuba. China will host the third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation and intends to work closely with G77 members. The summit's far-reaching impact was seen by experts as a step toward reshaping the global order. It concluded with a declaration underscoring the urgent need for a more inclusive and coordinated approach to global financial governance and reforms in the international financial system. The next summit of the G77 in China is scheduled for January in Kampala, Uganda. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.